Hey, 7th graders, Mr. Adler, another one of your flipped lessons. Today we're going to be working on important documents of the Revolution. We're going to talk about two of the most important documents of the Revolution. One you've probably heard of, Declaration of Independence. One you probably haven't, Common Sense, written by Thomas Paine. This should already be in your interactive notebook on page 56. You're going to be jotting down the information inside each. All right. Where you see the underlined terms, put them in right there. All right, here we go. Went too far. Let's go back. All right, so Declaration of Independence. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. Pretty predominant political figure in early American history. He's going to go on to be our third president of the United States. Very, very wealthy plantation owner during this time period. Recruited by the Continental Congress to draft the letter that they're basically thinking of sending to King George III. Basically telling them that the colonists are going to declare their independence from England. They select a committee. But they kind of know Jefferson is known for being a particularly good writer. They look over his drafts a little bit, kind of give him some insight and things like that. But most of the ideas and the actual kind of what the text says are going to be Jefferson's work. Now, he's going to borrow a lot from other workers, but mostly through going to be his writing. All right, the document was created July 4, 1776, or not created or finished. It was kind of being written for weeks, multiple drafts and things like that. Even though this is the day that we celebrate our independence, probably really shouldn't be. Most people did not sign the Declaration of Independence until August of that year, and it wasn't actually sent to the King of England until late into August, and probably didn't reach him until much into the fall. And then really, we may have declared our independence, but we really didn't gain our independence until the victory at the Battle of Yorktown. So this is the date that it was kind of sent to the Continental Congress. Find a spot for me to kind of get out of the way. The document is created basically to kind of tell the king, look, this is why we need to be independent. This is why we think we need to be independent. All right. And it went far to kind of include some other things as well. Basically talked about what a government should look like, and kind of explained that in great detail in kind of the front section of the Declaration of Independence. It included long, I think there's at least over 50 grievances of what the wrongs the king did to the colonies. All right, and it's everything from taxes to trade rules, but it's an awful lot of financial issues there, and really kind of in depth on all of those. And they were particular in the king. They really didn't say too much about Parliament. They knew the king was kind of the galvanizing focus that was going to really get people to support this idea, and they really wanted to outlist the wrongs. And then the kind of why, or the ending was kind of, this is what we're going to do based on all of these things. We'll talk a little bit more of that in the next slide. Why the Declaration of Independence was created is Thomas Jefferson is borrowing a lot from one of our early Enlightenment thinkers that we talked about in number 49, this guy by the name of John Locke. John Locke's theory was basically if most government's power comes from the people, and then if a government isn't doing what it should do, then it's the people's job to get rid of it. And that's pretty much, Jefferson really plagiarized Locke. There's no really easy way to say it. He adds these ideas of kind of natural rights that he changes a little bit differently than Locke, but still, if you're somebody who read Locke and read Jefferson's, you're seeing a lot of similarities. These ideas of natural rights, these are things that people just have: right to life, right to liberty, pursuit of happiness, etc. They outline how the king abused these rights and the grievances. Kind of the first part is talking about these natural rights, and then the third part of the Declaration of Independence is this new idea, at least to the colonies, again, not new. John Locke was saying this, 30 years before this. It's the people's job to create a new government if that government is not doing what it should. That government comes from, it's this idea, the consent of the government. Government power comes from the consent of the governed. What does that mean? Government by the people. This idea of a democratic, Republican style of government is what they want to create in America. Thomas Paine comes along, and he's a little bit different than Thomas Jefferson in a lot of ways. Number one, he's an everyday kind of lower middle class person. Thomas Jefferson, one of the wealthiest people in the country during the colonial period. Paine, on the other hand, is just a regular kind of middle class worker. He's come over from England, and he's basically coming from a sense of he's trying to connect to the people, because not everybody could read and understand. Even to this day, Jefferson's ideas, Paine's ideas, he was trying to bring this to the everyday person. That's kind of why he called it common sense. All right, it's common sense that this should be happening. All right, his document is going to be published months before the Declaration of Independence, and some people think this really kind of spurred that Declaration of Independence move, because his ideas, kind of took fire in the colonies. Common Sense was a pamphlet, as you can see there, and it was the first actual document that called for American independence, and it kind of Paine outlined his reasons for that in very, very simple terms. Over 50,000 copies were sold. And remember, this is a time period when there's about 2.5 million people in the colonies. This is a huge number. If you ever heard that saying, it sold like hotcakes, that saying doesn't really mean anything. They should say the saying, it sold like common sense. Everybody was reading this. This was the bestseller. This was the must-have. This was the summer blockbuster. They would have made a summertime movie about common sense if it came out today. But it was written in a way that could reach a majority of people. Jefferson's writing could not reach a majority of people because, remember, he was one of the few people that was college educated. So he's using a lot of that college educated background. Thomas Paine isn't. He's writing for the everyday people. Why did Thomas Paine write his work? He outlined his political ideas, and these ideas were some of it was very similar to the Declaration of Independence. A lot of it was very much more radical. Number one, he said he wanted to replace the king with a democratic or republican form of government, kind of the same thing as the Declaration of Independence. But where Paine went a little bit farther is he talked about equal rights for all Americans. He talked a lot about the need to kind of, regardless of people's race, regardless of people's financial background, that everybody has rights. Everybody has these equal rights. And Paine's writing went further later in his life to become even more radical, more liberal, in calling for a lot of these equal rights issues, particularly when the Constitution comes out and things like that. All right, there you have it. There's a flip lesson for tonight. Make sure you answer those questions and puzzle comes out. And be sure, if you have any questions, hit me up on Schoology. Use that class page. If I can't get to it, some of your friends may be able to get to it as well. All right, see you later.